Hello children, welcome to Paradise Lost class 9. We are moving to the next part of the poem. Then where they know to men by various names and various idols through the heathen word, say muse the names, then know who first, who last. So now here another invocation. Milton, he seeks the help of the muse to tell him the names who approached Satan first from the slumber and who lost. That is, which fallen angel first roused from slumber at the call of Satan, and which one was the last. So he wants to know, and for this he seeks the help of the muse. So say muse the names, then know who first, who last. That is, who approached Satan first from the slumber and who approached him last, roused from the slumber on a fiery coach at their great emperor's call. Great emperor's call is Satan's call, as next in birth came singly where he stood on the vast band, while the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof. The chief were those who from the pit of hell, roaming to seek their prey on earth, thus fixed their seats long after next the seat of God. Their altars by his altar, gods adored among the nations round, and thus abide Jehovah thundering out of Sion, throned between the cherubim. Yet, often placed within his sanctuary, itself thy shines. Abominations and with cursed things his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness dust affront his light. So in these lines, Milton talks about how mankind was corrupted by the evil intentions of fallen angels. That is, after the call, that is Satan, at the call of their great leader, that is Satan's call, one by one they came in order of precedence. One by one, the Satans, they were fallen angels, they came in order of precedence, where Satan stood on the empty shore. Among the devils, the chief were those. Among the devils, the chief were those having left the abyss of hell, and they wandered on earth in quest of victims. Okay, they wandered on earth in quest of victims, that is among mankind, and dared to establish their centers of worship long after their fall. So even in the vicinity of God's temple, and they claim adoration from mankind. Is the fallen angels, these fallen angels could even dare to establish themselves close to the temple of Jehovah at Sion, where he sat on his throne between the golden images of cherubim. So Jehovah thundering out of Sion. So the leaders among the fallen angels are named according as they were known among their worshippers. So most of these fallen angels seem to have set themselves up in the countries bordering on the Holy Land. So here are, therefore, the names of deities worshipped in Syria, Babylonia, and Egypt. So thundering out of Sion is, thunder is actually the voice of Jehovah, and Sion is the sacred place of thunder. So there may be a reference to the 10 commandments, one of which forbade adultery, which were delivered in the midst of thunder. So this could be also the reference here. Jehovah thundering out of Sion, throned between the cherubim. So the two figures of wrought gold, which were placed on the mercy seat of the lid of sacred ark in the Holy of Holies. So now we are moving on to the next important section of this book 1. The chief devils are named and described here. So the first is Mulak. So Mulak, first there was Mulak. Mulak was the first chief devil. And Mulak, the meaning of this word Mulak means crude, warlike, or manslayer. So that is the meaning of this word Mulak. Mulak means manslayer. So first there was Mulak, horrid king. Okay, Mulak is described as a horrid king. Mulak is horrid because of the sacrifice of the firstborn male children at his worship. That is, in Israel, a father had the power of life and death over his children. So there was nothing to prevent the staunch worshipper of Mulak from sacrificing his children to him. So Mulak was a horrid king to whom human sacrifices, including children, were made. So at the worship of Mulak, drums and timbrels were beaten loudly so as to drown the cries of children who were passed through fire. And him the Ammonite worshipped in Rabbah and her hearty plain. So the Ammonites worshipped him instead of Rabbah. The Ammonites worshipped him to Rabbah. So the Ammonites, this is collectively used here. The Ammonites were distantly related to the Israelites. They lived on the east of Jordan. So Rabbah was their chief city. So Rabbah was the Ammonites' chief city. That was Rabbah. And Arnon is flows into the Dead Sea. So the Ammonites worshipped Moloch to Rabbah and in its neighborhood also. That is in Argob and in Basin to the farthest limit of the river Arnon. So everywhere they worshipped, that is Arnon. Everywhere they worshipped Moloch to Rabbah. And he is not content with such audacious neighborhood. The wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud to build this temple right against the temple of God on that opprobrious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom, Tophet Thens, and Black Geneha, called the type of hill. See, Moloch, however, was not content with establishing his sphere of influence in the neighborhood of Israel. He even seduced Solomon, who was reputed for his wisdom. And what Solomon did, Solomon built a temple to Moloch on the mountain of Olives, right against the temple of God. So this is what Solomon did. He built a temple to Moloch on the Mount of Olives. It is right against the temple of God, and dedicated the pleasant valley of Hinnom to Moloch, so that later it came to be known as Tophet and Geneha, symbolically of hell itself. Okay, so this is the first description about the first devil, Moloch. Next to Moloch comes Chemos. So Chemos, god of lust. The biblical stories are used to illustrate the Chemos character, and he was worshipped in towns and cities. So Chemos, it is associated with the sensual. Okay, so Chemos meaning is god of lust, sensual. So Chemos, like Moloch, was worshipped with human sacrifices. So next, Chemos, the obscene dread of Moab's sons from Aroret Nebo and the wild of southmost Abraham. So he was also worshipped with human sacrifice. That is an object of dread to the Moabites. So obscene, he is obscene because of human sacrifices. That's why it is said that obscene, because of human sacrifices. And Misha, the king of Moab, ascribed to Chemos the victories he won over Israel. So Chemos He was feared and worshipped by the Moabites in the region from Aroer to Nebo, and the wilderness of Abram in the farther south in Hesobah and Heronim. The tract conquered by Sinohan beyond the vine-clad valley of Sibmah and yield to the Dead Sea. So his second name was Pure, P-E-O-R, Pure, when he seduced the Israelites in Sittim. So after they had left Egypt, and the Israelites worshipped him with licentious ceremonies, which brought on them the wrath of God. So his licentious worship extended even to the Mount of Olives. So this Mount of Olives, you know, which already had a bad name as the seat of Moloch. So on the Mount of Olive by the grove of Moloch, the murderer. So thus, lust chemos was placed side by side with murderer Moloch on the Mount of Olives. So later, they were driven to hell by Josiah. So they were followed by the bad angels known in the region from Euphrates to the river that separates Egypt from Syria. So they were called Balaam and Ashtaroth. So Balaam and Ashtaroth. Balaam means male deity, that is sun god, and Ashtaroth a female equivalent of Chemos, female deity, that is moon god. Okay, so Balaam is sun god, a male deity, and Ashtaroth a female equivalent of Chemos. It's a female deity, that is a moon god. So this Balaam and Ashtaroth, the former male, the first one male and the latter female. So the spirits, these spirits can assume either the male or the female sex, or both as they please. So they are not cumbered with the material body. They are made of a fine substance, that is ether, and they are free to take whatever shape they please, either expanded or shortened, bright or dim. And even they can accomplish their purpose through the medium of air, and they can shower either love or enmity in their action. So for them, the Israelites often abandoned their true God and left in neglect his genuine altar, worshipping animals for gods. So for this, they suffered defeat in battle at the hands of enemies whom they could have easily despised. So in works of love or enmity full for those, the race of Israel or Shuk. So for this they suffered, that is both Balaam and Ashtaroth suffered defeat in battle at the hands of the enemies whom they could have easily despised. So in their company came Ashtaroth, whom the Phoenician called Astarte, that is queen of heaven, represented with the crescent of the moon. So Phoenician maidens paid homage to her bright image and sang praises of her at night by the moonlight. That is queen of heaven. Phoenicians. This is Ashtaroth, worshipped in Phoenicia. So Astarte, the correct form of the word. So Ashtaroth, this is the correct form of the word. So the biblical writers seemed, to have distorted the word in order to bring it into contempt. So Astarte, this word Astarte, was a moon goddess and is called as a queen of heaven. Okay, Astarte was a moon goddess and is called as queen of heaven in Judah. So the women of Judah offered her cakes, and she was represented with a lunar crescent on her head, with crescent horns. So this, she was represented with the lunar crescent on her head. To whose right? Okay, we'll see you next class. Thank you.